Welcome to Maple Leafs Hot Stove Podcast, episode 116. I'm Nick Ashbourne, joined as always by Anthony Petrielli. It's been a while since we last recorded, and in that time, Auston Matthews has taken a nasty hit from Goulx. It has put him out for the season. There has been a lot to how that has all unfolded. Unfortunate for him, just for the first part getting an injury like that. It sucks. He's going to have to work his way back from an MCL injury. I guess, Anthony, where do you want to go? We got the hit, the injury, the response, the future. There's a lot of angles here on the Auston Matthews situation, and none of them are particularly rosy for your Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, first and foremost, they always give you something to talk about. When we recorded the deadline episode coming right out of it, I was kind of sitting there going, all right, well, they did absolutely the bare minimum. They brought in 0 bodies externally. What is really the point of the rest of this season, essentially? And it took them about a week to have, some big catastrophic play that is, for a team that's out of it completely, pretty much. It's kind of become the talk of the hockey world to some degree here. I don't think that's a Toronto thing. I think that it's
no, they
pretty
had it on the
notable.
TNT panel day after, a couple days after.
Yeah,
It's up there. It's in the news.
So the Leafs produce content, to give them that. They do this all on their own. Look, there's so many layers to it. We'll try to unravel it as best as we can and talk about paths moving forward. First off, I don't think we need to, justify this part. It was a bad hit. I don't think anyone.
We don't need to litigate the hit. Everyone agrees it was a fucking brutal hit.
One of
should be in the game.
One of the very rare instances where every single person went, "Yeah, that was bad."
Yeah, there's no one who's like, actually, it wasn't so bad. It was a hockey, but no one was in that camp.
And then objectively, the lack of response in the moment was also really bad. Now, this is the first, I guess, tipping point where you might get a few different responses, right? People will come and say, well, what's fighting him going to do? Or, that portion of it. Look, this is a team sport and there are team dynamics at play. And there's a locker room. It's a group of grown men that play together and should care for each other. In the same way most people listening probably wouldn't stand by, I'd like to think, if one of their family members got hit. It is in that same breath. Or at least it should be. Clearly it wasn't, but it should be. And to watch kind of the way it transpired and to hear some of the responses afterwards, Morgan Riley kind of essentially noting he should have done it. He wasn't quite sure what was happening. I think there's a side story there in terms of has he known what's been happening on the ice all season? I don't know how you miss that play. It's literally in the middle of the ice, and it was a prime scoring chance. It's impossible to miss what happened.
I rewatched it a couple times before we came on the recording here because I wanted to know, is there any plausible deniability for any of these guys? And there just isn't. Just the angles of where they're watching the play from, Nylander throwing his hand up, in reference to there should be a penalty.
That's a bad look. That's a really bad look.
And Riley on the broadcast, you can't totally see them in that moment, but from where they are on the ice, everyone can see it. The I didn't really see what happened defense is not a defense that makes sense.
Okay.
It just
Cowan is the one guy on the ice
circling it.
I can not even in terms of not seeing it. He's kind of the one guy I'd give a pass to because he's 20. Yeah. He shouldn't necessarily be the one.
If he goes to war with Goulx, bad things can happen to him. He's a little boy.
Yeah. Is everyone else on the ice going to sit there and be like, well, we didn't see that one either. We didn't see the hit. We didn't see Cowan fighting him. We have no idea what was happening the entire time. So look, I don't buy any sort of rationale where it's who cares? Why does that matter? It does matter. There's a team dynamic and a culture play. It actually has far less to do with Goulx specifically, in my mind, and more to do about their team and their team dynamics and their culture within that room. That hit ultimately ended up ending Matthews' season. And one of the common things I've seen around is, well, if roles were reversed, if that happened to Nylander, would Matthews have jumped in? And that's fair. I wouldn't fight any argument of someone saying Matthews wouldn't step in, but that doesn't absolve everyone on the ice of what happened. All that means to me is that if Matthews is sitting there furious that no one stepped in, he should take a step back and think of the culture that he's helped cultivate as the captain of the group in a bigger picture. But in the picture of what happened on the ice, there's no getting around it. That was a letdown. And there's tons of soft stars in this league. Tons. You could go through it. There's so many guys that don't get involved in, altercations or things after the whistles. The Leafs just played Minnesota. Quinn Hughes, he's tough. He gets involved. I've never seen Quinn Hughes get involved in anything. But if Radko Gudas tore his MCL, I promise you, guys are like guns a-blazing into that. They're certainly not looking around at their skates and watching Gudas float on by to the penalty box and then down the tunnel. And so I think that's probably a good place for us to kind of start that conversation. Like, that is a problem. How do you go about untangling that? Because that's a big issue, Nick.
Yeah, so there's the cultural aspect, right? Like, it is a single event, but the reality is it's a single event that does not happen to a team with a functional culture. Like, it is so beyond the pale that you can't really give them a pass. Like, there's times where something happens and the timing is just off and the people don't quite see it, or it's just a bad night and people are checked out, and there's way to absolve people of certain versions of that, but not that version. Not it's your captain, not it's a hit that looks like that, not it's a brutal offender who has also like been an antagonist of this franchise. Not that matters that much, but just
And
it's
more excuse to get after him. Like, you should,
it's,
I'd be looking for anything to get after Gudas on a normal basis.
it is the most typical textbook version of this thing happening, and so there's no hiding from it. Like, this has revealed where they're at from a cultural standpoint. Like, that's problem one, and that's a big problem.
And
That's a
they
hard
know it. I feel like that should also be like, Berube came out after, and listeners and the Lord know I'm definitely not one to sit here and give Craig Berube credit for much of anything, but he came out and said, yeah, four guys should have jumped in. And we mentioned Morgan Riley. He, was apologetic and very much on his end of things was going, yeah, I should have. They know everything that they've done
I mean,
since. They
if
know.
Berube is a subject matter expert at anything, this is the thing he's a
Correct.
subject matter expert in. So like, there's that side of it, and like, that is quite intangible and that is quite difficult to parse. But there's also like the more, I don't know, utilitarian aspect of it, where if you let teams do that to your star player, to your captain, you really are giving them license to do anything to anyone. Like, you're showing, like, there is no situation that exists in the game or on the fringes of the game that is going to have any kind of deterrent against them. And again, like, I'm not the biggest like lover of fighting. I'm not the biggest like bloodlust hockey fan, and I'm not trying to judge here. I'm just saying there's a spectrum of all of that. I'm not the biggest version of hockey fan, but like, this is so extreme to let go. Like, it really, like, I genuinely believe beyond the cultural component, like, it is hurting your ability to put a successful product on the ice, because other teams are going to feel, and I'm not saying the Leafs are presenting a huge deterrent before. Like, the Leafs had a reputation before, and that reputation was well earned. But this is another step in that direction, to like a place that really, I believe, hurts your ability to put a good product on the ice in terms of scoring goals and winning games. Like, forgetting like being tough and being like the nasty ones that everyone likes. Just in terms of literally winning games, if you let teams do anything at any time, which again is the message that sends, like that hurts your ability to win. And that's a problem.
Yeah, and I mean, it's in some ways a microcosm of years running now where, moments have happened and they haven't risen to them. And, you know, takes courage to step up in those moments. I'm not saying it's easy. Gudas is a tough customer. This is not a soft player by any means. So it does take something within you to go do that. But, there's a right thing to do, and then there's what they did. And, I'm sure everyone saw Elliot Friedman came out at Hockey Night in Canada after and said that that's going to have ramifications moving forward. That, the hit and lack of response and everything about it. And I did message him about it just to sort of ask, and try to get more details. It didn't necessarily go anywhere. He did respond, but it didn't necessarily go anywhere. And he wasn't entirely sure how Matthews felt, in fairness. So, I look at it and say there were a few things that were straight up. First off, we've talked about Morgan Riley enough. Like that, the time there has to end. It already had to end. That hit is almost irrelevant to it. If you want to call it another contributing factor, go for it. It's just that time has ended. That was really the first time though this year. We talked about Brandon Carlo a lot leading up to the deadline, just in terms of a player with some value that I thought could have brought something back for them. And it's still my belief that they should have traded one of Ekman Larsson or Carlo to try to extract some surplus value, as opposed to just making yourself whole with draft picks, maybe coming out with a surplus, the old Michael Scott reference for those that watch The Office, and try to give yourself some extra picks here to throw around and potentially even improve the team in any which way you see fit. But now that I'm looking at this, Carlo was on the ice for the Anthony Stolarz incident. Stolarz was furious, has to defend himself. I thought it was embarrassing then. I was in the arena for that too. It was just mind-blowing, everything about it. And now he's on the ice for this one. I can't look past that. You don't get two. I'm sorry, you don't get two. I'm not saying to throw them away for free, but if I'm looking at it ramification wise, I'm just going, there's like no way. You've been in the league, you're a tenured veteran. You came from Boston. You should absolutely know better across the board. And you've now done it twice. And those were two of the low point moments of the season for the team. And I can't get over that. That was I've generally sat there and said, it's hard to find right-handed defenseman, matchup guy, can PK, all this stuff. Has size, blah blah blah. He's cheap, all these things. Like even just looking past the trade portion of it, but that for me, I just went no. I don't think you can. I don't think you can let that go. Cowan, I can give the pass. Nylander, I'm not entirely sure. I don't think you're going to sit there and say trade him because he was on the ice for that and actually put his hand up for a penalty, which is insane behavior in that situation. But I'd definitely be more open to it. I'd put it that way. It'd have to be the right deal. And again, I wouldn't give Carlo away for free because of it. But I looked at that and said, yeah, like guys got to go. And I'd be coming out looking at the team saying, if this is how you act, like, you won't be here.
Well, you talked about okay, we're going to give Cowan a pass, and I broadly agree with that. Like, why are we giving Cowan a pass? Well, because he's a rookie, because he's young, because he's small, because he hasn't really been about that, and he hasn't been around that. And that's not a fair battle to ask him to. Now, there's a version of that where there's a scrum, and I'm sure he's washing somebody's face and he's involved,
Sure.
whatever. But the exact opposite things are true about Carlo. Carlo's huge, and he's a veteran, and he should be ready for a physical battle. And yes, it is not Brandon Carlo's job to go out and fight every night. That would be really bad if he did that. He's needed on the team. He's needed to be a penalty killer, eat tough minutes. You don't want your defenseman doing that. And like this is an emergency situation. I don't know how better to characterize it. Like guys have to be ready for an emergency situation. And the fact that he has these characteristics and he wasn't in any way, and and the Stolarz one was brutal because there was no plausible deniability on him not seeing exactly how that transpired. It's tough. It's tough. And I don't know. Like it is it's difficult to avoid being a prisoner of the moment, and it's possible that some of this simmers down in terms of how he's perceived. But as you said, it's tough to see him have two of these situations with Riley. Yeah, like the last nail was in that coffin. Like they're just pounding extra nails into the top of the lid at this point. It doesn't really matter. The Cowan doesn't really matter. Nylander is interesting, but yeah, you're really pushing the boundaries of like Willie's going to be Willie. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of things that's like, oh, it's just Willie being Willie, but then there's certain times where it's like, yeah, you have to also, I mean, be an adult for lack of a better term as well. And yeah, it
He
was not
hasn't
what
been
you wanted
one.
to
He
see.
hasn't been one all year. That's the
No,
truth. He's obviously very talented, and I like him. He's a game breaker, but he doesn't conduct himself like a professional hockey player. He definitely doesn't conduct himself like an individual where you would look at, let's say, Easton Cowan and say, "Hey, follow that guy's lead. Do you see the example he's setting? You should do what he's doing." There's no one in their right mind is going to sit there and say that. And you can say he works hard and he goes on early in practice and works on his shot and works on. He obviously does those things. He's unbelievably
I
talented.
think he generally cares. Like, and he's done
Yeah.
well in the playoffs, and you've
Yeah.
seen his confrontation with Marner on the bench in the past. Like, he's not the most toxic example of the type of
No.
guy he could be, but it's still there are some tough moments with him.
Yeah.
For
And I'm
sure.
not saying, yeah, just to be clear, I'm not saying he doesn't care either. I think he does. And I think he works on his game and I think he's diligent within that. But in terms of, again, setting an example for younger guys and just his overall way that he conducts himself and all these sorts of things, it's lacking, put it that way. And we're hearing Matthew Nye's name come up in the rumor mill, so to speak. And Nylander is significantly better than Nye, so let's square that. But Nyes is significantly younger, and if I'm looking at it and I'm trying to build moving forward, not win right now, but build moving forward, I know which one of the two I'd want. It's the guy who's significantly younger. So, like I said, I'm not sitting here saying Nylander was on the ice, put his hand up, it looked terrible, trade his ass. But I am saying I would be far more open to those conversations than I was previously, and the two defensemen for me would both be gone. And it's just enough is enough, Nick. That's where we're at now. I'm tired of hearing of like player meetings. I saw Darren Dreger brought up the Timothy Liljegren incident from his first year there, and they had Tree Living called a meeting after to say this isn't happening again. No more of this like toughness. Our toughness is our power play crap. We're moving forward. And to their credit, they generally did a much better job from that move moving forward, probably for that rest of that year and most of last year. And then this year, it's kind of just gone up in flames. Honestly, from the start, we were flagging in preseason guys running Stolars and nobody doing anything about it. And they should have been Donnybrooks, Nick. It should have just been line brawls, honestly. We're watching preseason games and we're watching AHLers put their shoulder down and drive into Stolars. Nobody's doing anything. And it's preseason. Who gives a shit about these games? Don't touch our goalie. And then the season started, and guys just kept running it to the point where your goalie boils over. And then he was brutal. And then he got hurt. And it's just been one thing after the other. And look, this might be the peak of the mountain, so to speak, of like enough is enough. But to me, it's kind of been brewing all throughout the year. And they should have been looking at and they can tack on other things as part of that, namely, which I still haven't forgotten, it still doesn't really sit right with me in general, to be honest, is that performance in the Vegas game in Toronto. It was a big game. The crowd was hyped up. You immediately get scored on. Jack Eichel's like Ric Flair level wooing when he scores that goal, which should have just pissed you off as an athlete or competitor. Everything else aside, that alone should have just been like, no, absolutely not. And there's just been too much of this now, and it's time for guys to go who aren't going to do those things that are proper when it happens. Like you can't the time for talking about it is so far gone. It's time to move guys out and move forward accordingly because this can't be a thing.
Yeah, and I agree with that in a general sense. This type of talk does scare me because I think that it's very easy to get to fall into the trap of, fetishizing size and toughness. And like, I could imagine a world where there's an overcorrection here.
But I'm not saying to trade those guys for size or toughness. I'm just saying you got to go. like I hear you. I get those conversations come up, and they definitely happen in certain corners. I'm not sitting here saying trade Morgan Riley for the next Simon Benoit. I'm just saying you can't be here anymore.
Well, you trade Morgan Riley for anything. I mean,
sure, but you get the point. It's not to sit there and say, "Hey, can you trade, William Nylander for some third line plug that we know is going to come in guns a blazing." It's absolutely not. You have to get value.
I think it's a reminder about a little bit about how this culture works. Like they talked in the offseason about changing the DNA. That didn't happen. Like that definitively didn't happen because of what we saw in that game with Matthews. But for years throughout this kind of Matthews era, there's been a lot of talk about, just kind of shifting the players around, like mixing the bottom six has been churned, the defense core has been churned, and often they've been looking for this element. And there's been good attempts to do that, and there's been foolish attempts to do that. But at the end of the day, it does really feel like the culture is going to come from the leaders and the best players of the team. And if the leaders and the best players of the team,
well, it doesn't. That's not unique to the Leafs. That's every single franchise ever.
Exactly. So, like in a hypothetical world where this happens to another team, like, let's say the Panthers, because they're just an easy example. Like in a hypothetical world where Morgan Riley, Brandon Carlo, William Nylander, and Easton Cowan are Panthers, and this happens to Barkov, like I don't think they all stand around. Like I don't think it's the individual human beings that are necessarily the problem. Like it's not that
it's like the collection of them.
It's the collection of them, and it's a culture that's been built year after year after year after year. And that's not me saying like they can 100% be redeemed and they'll figure things out, and then next year Riley will be good. But it's almost not an individual failing thing because it's a pattern. And this is by far the worst example. It's an extreme example. As I said, I categorize it as an emergency, and I think that's a good categorization of the event. But like, if this was the first time this has happened, I think we would still be having a pretty intense conversation because it'd be like, holy shit, I can't believe that they didn't stand in for their captain at all. And I think we'd be talking a little bit more about those individuals as like, these guys fundamentally failed because we know the other guys on the bench would know what to do. But because it's been going on for so long throughout this era, it makes me, it's like, it's not that Morgan Riley is broken or Brandon Carlo is broken. It's like the Leafs are broken.
I mean, Brandon Carlo might be broken.
Carlo might.
I don't know.
And Riley might be broken in a different way. So maybe that's not the best way to frame it. But that's what's so difficult. And I don't think you can unbreak that without, like, you can't retool the culture.
No, and that's why I'm trying to balance this to the point where it doesn't sound unreasonable, where we're sitting there just going, well, these guys are on the ice, they got to go. At the same time, it's also unreasonable to sit there and be like, well, they learned their lesson now. Moving forward, they will like react and respond appropriately. Brandon Carlo still hasn't learned. This is twice for him.
if you brought back basically this team and they stumbled their way into a wild card spot, they would still get abused in the playoffs by the Panthers, the way we've seen in the past. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason to believe that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it a bunch in the summer. They knocked out their starting goalie, and you wouldn't have known it. And they've played Florida multiple times this year, and you still wouldn't have known it. Wasn't like you could sit there and say, well, it was the playoffs. Actually, let's give a good example. Hagel just destroys Barkov last year. And that's the third period of a 1-goal game. And Florida didn't respond. And if that was any other game, it actually looks pretty bad the way that they didn't respond. But Hagel gets a 5-minute major. They go on to crush them that series. And the rest of that series, to be honest, and basically every game since, has been an absolute gong show. Like, they're still frothing at the mouth about it. And you could you could accept that. Not only did they destroy them on the ice in terms of that actual series, but they've gotten their pound of flesh like 15 times over since then. And you've watched the Leafs play Florida a bunch of times this year already. Has anyone looked at Sam Bennett the wrong way? Has anyone said, I haven't forgotten what you did to our goalie? No. Like, we watched Stolarz lean over the bench and throw up in the middle of the game on a commercial break. I mean, think about that. And he didn't play the rest of the way.
That's fucked up for a
Yeah.
whole different set of reasons. But
Yeah. But nobody has sat there this entire time been like, yeah, no, I can't handle that. And like, no one's sitting there going, and I know Leaf fans have definitely kicked this around in their mind, and myself included, since like, well, what if Stolarz played the rest of that series? Did they win that series? And if they do, what does the rest of the playoffs look like? And it's not eating anyone to the point where you're looking at Bennett and you're thinking about Stolarz throwing up over their bench. And then the fact that they lost that series and you play them in your division this year multiple times, more than you play any other teams in the league. And no one's gone out of their way. No one's had a bad intention against them. Nobody's even just looked at him and said, like, we're fighting. Like, just no. Like, I just, like, I can't handle it. Like, we're fighting. Just nothing. Right? So this has been going on all year. You can argue it's been going on for much longer than this year. It's just, again, it's hit that point where talk is cheap. If you want it to change, if you're not happy with it, players need to change now. That is a clear as day. I've already given the 2 defensemen on the ice. Like, to me, that's table stakes at this point for me. I'd be like, you both have to go. Easton Cowan, to me, we've talked about giving the pass on it. Like, he fights Jackson Lacombe in the third period. And part of that, to me, was kind of a message from him based on the lack of response. And I'm sure every single thing that he heard in the dressing room, which probably wasn't directed at him, but he knew he was on the ice.
He just followed instructions. That was a young guy following instructions.
And he was like, it's happening. Like, I don't care. And so kudos to him. He showed me something in that game after the way that he went for it. And he knew. Like, that was partly like, he was embarrassed. He was probably confused. You know, it's like you have like the young kid in the group and he's like looking around at the adults going, what's happening here? Like, it's like no one doing anything. That, like, it partly looked like that. And I'll extend further. He wasn't on the ice, but we talked all summer that, like, Matthew Nyes needed to be this driving force for them, this physical presence. We keep hearing that he's a power forward. And I'm sorry, it just has not happened in any capacity this year for me. Like, he's not even close. And we look at that Anaheim game as an example. Lacombe throws that hit. Cowan immediately drops his gloves and fights him. Like, there's no hesitation. And then compare that to Kreider cross-checks Yarncroke in the face, and he drops like a sack of potatoes. And Nyes comes on, and he's kind of like dangling his mitts at him, like, yeah, I'll fight you. But Nick, let me ask you this. If you think someone has harmed a teammate or friend or whatever, are you asking them permission to fight? Or are you just fighting them?
Well, also, I mean, I think some of that might be a lack of savvy more than a lack of spirit. Like, I think that might be him kind of assuming Kreider will fight him, but Kreider's making a business decision. Like, he's an old man in this league at this point. He doesn't want to do that.
Why would Kreider fight him? He's much older. He's definitely going to lose that fight. Nyes probably knows that too. And you're
Yeah.
asking him, you're like, I know what you did to my teammate is messed up and I don't like it. But like, also, is it cool if we fight because of that? Like, I don't understand what you're asking him. If you don't like it, and he clearly didn't, then just go do it.
There's also no competitive context anymore for any of this stuff, right? Like if you want to make criticisms of like, oh, keep a cool head, fight when the opportunity presents itself, don't take the extra penalty and all that jazz, like it doesn't matter if they win or lose at this point. So like
Yeah.
you could be on your P's and Q's with etiquette and toughness and focus on that because if you win or if you lose the game, yeah, I think this is kind of neither here nor there's conversation, but then like winning some games here, like really kind of solidified the idea that the tank's not going so great. So again, it doesn't matter if you win or lose. So if it doesn't matter if you win or lose, then what does matter? And these are the type of things that maybe do matter a little bit more than if we're having this conversation at the beginning of the season, you're trying to get out to a good start, or you're heading into the playoffs and you're fighting for a particular seed, then you can pick apart the behavior and be like, is this the smart move? You don't have to be smart anymore. There's no
Yeah.
need to be smart.
I respected after the game against Minnesota, Stolars, who was lights out, said, like we're trying to build a culture here and said like there are young guys that we have called up right now. We're trying to set the example. Now, I wouldn't say everyone in the lineup is doing that, but I respected the general premise of what Stolars was trying to articulate. And he's right. You should be trying to set an example. You should be trying to show guys the way. You do need to create that culture. We've talked about this heading into the deadline. If you think the team is just going to screw off for 30 games and then magically flip a switch in the summer, that's not real. Now, I'm not advocating for them to win. Ideally, they work really hard and play good hockey, and then they ultimately lose the game.
I just don't think
But
they can lose enough. Like,
not with their goaltending. That's always
no.
been the concern. Their goaltending is so good. I mean, they got dominated. It's funny hearing, oh well, Matthews went down, so suddenly the team played way better. They're not playing better.
Yeah, I have heard like a lot of that talk. Like, oh, it's really galvanized them, and now they're showing. It's like, dude,
No,
they've been less
Wool
than
was unbelievable
40%
against Buffalo and stole them a
shot.
point, and
Yeah,
Stolars was unbelievable against Minnesota. Minnesota's
at
own
the end, he
coach.
was
Yeah,
incredible. Yeah, the last four games they've been under 40% shots and expected goals. Like they're getting filled in, and
Minnesota's
also
own
fair.
coach came
Yeah.
out and was like, we dominated them in essentially every statistical category possible. We just didn't score. Like when he made the post to post save on Zuccarello backdoor, which was like only a few minutes after Minnesota just made it 3-2. I was like, they're probably winning this game now. Like this guy, like he's so dialed in and he's so good when he's on. He is. Yeah, Stoller's excellent goalie. He's no one's ever doubting his talent. It's his ability to stay
When he's
healthy.
available and he's
Yeah,
healthy and he's good, he's good.
yeah,
Okay.
he's really good.
Thing before we get out of the Matthews world, and we can move on. It doesn't have to be the whole episode, but like you're talking about building that culture, and I think that's right. Like, what is the rest of the season for? That's something you can do. You can build on that a little bit. Start doing things better. Start doing things the right way to a certain extent. But like the weird part about that is now that happens without Matthews. And so
Yeah.
Matthews is off to the side. He's experienced something that, if it were me, would make me feel a little bit different. And like you said, Freeman didn't have any insight. No one has any insight from Matthews on how he feels. But if it were me, I would feel a little bit differently about this team. And then you're trying to start something new almost without Matthews. The reality is Matthews has all the control in the world to do exactly what he wants to do. But the fact that he's going to miss the rest of the season while they try and potentially figure some things out, and he's not really going to be the leader. Was he the leader before? Whatever. Just sit on that, acknowledge that for a second. Like that adds a layer of weirdness to the situation.
Yeah, I mean, my stance on the whole Matthews thing on that has just kind of been he also first of all, I hate this image in my mind of him lying on the ice and nobody doing anything. Like I hate it. I hate everything about it. It makes me sick to my stomach as someone who has, followed, been around hockey my entire life. Like it's sickening. Like it actually
But
genuinely
I'd hate to see if
I
that were McDavid or
yeah.
any of the great stars of the game too, like
Yeah.
Makar or whatever. Like that's you just don't want to see that in general.
Like a few weeks ago I joked with my wife and newborn child who doesn't know shit obviously because he's only like 3 months old. It's like we're chilling the rest of the season. Like it is what it is. And here I found myself on a Thursday getting fired up about a Leafs versus Ducks game. And so I don't like anything about that. And I still, regardless of how Matthews might have acted if were the shoe on the other foot, the team should have stepped in. Like we've clearly established that. But now if I'm Matthews, I'm not necessarily thinking of like I am acknowledging that, but I'm thinking about my own culpability in that because he is the leader of that culture.
I
Like he is the
think
captain. So if he sits there and he's upset, the first thing I'd say to him is, "What have you ever done?" That would be the first thing I'd say to him.
I think you're 100% right, and I don't want to claim to know the mind of Auston Matthews too well, but I just don't get the impression that that's what he's thinking. You know what I mean? Like that takes a level of
Sure.
introspection and self-awareness and maturity that I'm just don't tend to ascribe to him. And maybe that's unfair on my part, but I think what you're
Look,
describing is what he should be thinking, not necessarily what he is
yeah.
thinking.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and even attempt to guess what Matthews is thinking. My kind of thoughts on Matthews across the board is he should sit there and think about what he's cultivated as the captain and how he has helped get to this place for the organization. We're talking about Cowan. He fought in that Ducks game. That one fight tied him with all of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, their entire Leafs tenure, all four of them. That one fight by Cowan tied him. And that one fight that ties Cowan's actual fight was Stamkos jumping Matthews, in which he wanted absolutely nothing to do with it, despite probably having like 30 pounds on Stamkos. So, like, Matthews has to sit there and say, well, what have I ever done? And how have I come to someone's defense in a real way, not like you push someone or gave them like a little cross check in a scrum, but like you really, you know, you put down what you want to get pick up kind of thing. And I saw, for example, of course, everyone's favorite, the Kachuk Brothers podcast. They talked about it because, of course, they did. And I'm not going to claim to listen to the whole thing because I don't listen to their podcast, but I saw the clip of them talking about it circulate, and Brady Kachuk was sitting there going, like, I would be pissed if my teammates didn't do that. And I was sitting there watching it going, yeah, I'm sure you would be, Brady, because you stand up for your teammates. So if you do all of what you do, and then when the shoe's on the other foot and nobody exists, yeah, I'd imagine you would be pretty upset. But I also watched Logan Stanley sucker punch you. No one really did much of anything. So let's calm down there on the rhetoric on his end. But those are two different posts. Like, I think Matthews has to own some of that too. I think Matthews has to look at his entire season and own it. And that's really where the conversation would go. Like, he wasn't good. He had 53 points in 60 games for $13.25 million. There was a collection of guys that had more points than him by Christmas than he will finish the season with, playing 2/3 of the games that he did to get to 53. Like, it's brutal. The names of guys that you could look at that have been more productive than Matthews is honestly insane for a guy who is the second highest paid player in the league this year. Like, he wasn't even in the ballpark of expectations for me. And yes, I think there are extenuating circumstances to it. I think Berube's done a terrible job through and through. I couldn't make that any more clear. I feel like I've made that clear the entire season. I have been saying to fire this guy since October. We're currently watching good players go elsewhere and immediately play well. That is not a coincidence. This guy,
7 goals by those in 12 games from those three guys who they
Nick,
sent away.
Nick, this guy hasn't had a clue all year. Like the number of times I've actually looked at their lineup and thought to myself, yeah, it's a pretty good lineup. Not a great lineup, but like, that's a good lineup. At minimum, that's a playoff level forward group. Then to watch them go on the ice and play like absolute shit is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. And now to watch like pretty good players go elsewhere and immediately play up the lineup and contribute. It's like Nick Waugh is playing on Colorado's second line. And he started the season with Steven Lorentz because Scott Lawton broke his foot blocking a shot. It's a joke. Like, it's a joke through and through. Push that to the side,
Yeah,
though, for a second.
well covered territory.
Matthews was still not good enough. Like, there's no excuse for how bad he was. And we mentioned this, I think, the last episode. It's like they play, it's one thing to sit there and say, well, Matthews wasn't necessarily good, against Edmonton or, Colorado because he was matched up against McDavid all night and he had to lock it down defensively because the defense behind him stinks and Max Domi's on his right wing and all these things. But we were watching him play teams like the Rangers and the Flyers, and he blended into the game. Like he looked completely mediocre against mediocre teams. He didn't sit there and dominate those teams and then, struggle against better teams. He just looked completely disinterested from being a guy that takes over the game. And if he's not sitting there in any capacity saying, I need to be way better and I need to drive the bus, and we're not even at, the culture aspects or the physicality or the team bonding, just like, I need to drive the bus, period. If he's not sitting there thinking that, if he's coming in hot that no one stood up for me and what was this season? We weren't good. And if that's his attitude, like sadly, there's nothing left to say. Now, I can't speak for that. I don't know how Matthews is feeling. All we've really heard from Matthews is he thinks this is a one-off season. And fair enough. Maybe he actually believes that. I don't know. And people are going to jump to the nth degree like maybe we just did because they're going to sit because no one's heard a word from him. And why should they now at this rate? But I'm just saying, behind closed doors, if he doesn't have that own introspection and that own, ownership of what's happened here, and he doesn't feel that way, then, it's the same thing that we had with Mitch Marner in the summer, right? I was sitting there like, if you want to come back and say like, I haven't won shit here, I got paid really well, I didn't step up, I'm not ending my time here in Toronto like this, I would have welcomed that with open arms. 100% I would have. Instead, it was what we got. Everyone was mean to me. Why, Toronto fans are mean, the media is mean, everybody's just a big meanie. We didn't win shit. I didn't play well at any point down the stretch of critical moments, and then runs away. If that's going to just be the continued attitude here, and maybe it is, and like we will never be able to answer that in the moment. We might find out about it 5 years later, but we won't be able to answer that in the
There'll
moment.
be a book about it at some point.
Right? Then again, that also is what it is. Like that, it's a very clear path forward.
Yeah, there really are two roads for Matthews. And again, I don't want it to be too much like, oh, we're absolutely hammering Matthews because he is truly a victim and I feel bad for the injury he's taken. And that's not his fault. It's not his fault that he got hit
Yeah.
like that. But there are kind of two paths. And one of the paths is the one that you described, where he's like, how did this go so wrong? How can I come back stronger than ever? How can I pull this team back into relevance? What do I want to accomplish if I'm still here, or do I want to be here longer term? And maybe even the best way for me to decide if I want to be here longer term is to actually like come back as strong as possible and see how far we can get with me at my best. But there's also a road that like doesn't sound so far-fetched to me, where he thinks, I had a dog shit coach this year. I got absolutely buried. I got put with terrible line mates. I finally went and played for a winning team with the US. We won everything. Everyone praised me constantly and talked about how much they'd want to have me on their team. Then I came back and then I got absolutely brutalized by the biggest butcher in the NHL and nobody came to my defense. What a fucking nightmare. Like if I were Matthews, like I could understand being like, this is just has spiraled out of control. And why
I
would I
couldn't.
want to be here?
I couldn't. I think that lacks self-awareness. You know, like if Mark Scheifele wanted to sit there and say this season's a joke for Winnipeg, I could get that. He's sixth in the league in scoring. He is lighting it up. And if he's looking around going, what an absolute joke everything around me is, he's earned it. He's still tuning the league up. Matthews wasn't. He wasn't even close. He wasn't even remotely good enough. And you could say, and I said it too at times, he did have bad line mates, but they also gave him the best possible line mates they possibly could for stretches. And he still didn't look good. Like he played with
I agree
Nylander.
with
He
you.
played with Nyes.
I'm not saying that he's done well this year. He's been disappointing on every level. I'm just saying I can envision a world where that's the way his mind interprets the season. But again, like he leaves it up to interpretation because he doesn't say anything.
Now,
But I'm just saying
yeah,
I can envision that world. Like if you're trying to create a reality for yourself, that's a reality that he can create.
look, if Tree Living and or Berube are back and he goes, this is a joke, I will actually respect that. I actively will. I'll sit there.
I'll say it's a
Say,
joke too.
yeah,
If one of those guys
yeah,
are back, we'll be the
yeah.
first to say it's a joke.
And if he's not going to publicly come out there and be like, yeah, I'm not playing for that guy again. But in his if he does that internally and then it goes that way, yeah, I'll be like, yeah, the Leafs have mismanaged this once again. This is just crazy. This guy should have been gone so long ago. We're literally watching Columbus make a playoff push. And Columbus was like, what, 8 points behind the Leafs at one point? And they fired their coach. And the Leafs kept this guy to keep running Riley Carlo and McCabe Ekman Larson. And they just got repeatedly torched. And no one has given up more goals than the Leafs since the Olympics. It's insane. So, yeah, if that happens and Matthews goes, yeah, I'm not like Ryan O'Reilly for 3 straight years. Like that's just not happening. Well, I'm not even 30 yet. I would get that. But beyond that, he's got to give himself a look in the mirror as part of everything. And really, that's what he should use. Like this time should be get healthy, clear your head, come back rejuvenated, all these things. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying I would bet on that to happen. I'm just saying that's what should happen.
There we are in agreement. We'll just have to see what actually does happen with Matthews. I think we should at
And
least give some time to what's actually happening on the ice in the post Matthews world.
this is off ice though, but do we want to give any time to just the overall Leafs management group of just managing this entire situation? I think it's a joke. I think it's important too. I don't think they stand up for their players.
Oh, in terms of like what not doing enough with
It's
the suspension?
not enough. They did nothing. You know, there's yes, they went and they argued their case to the league behind closed doors, but everything they've done publicly, again, it's just upsetting. I don't know how they handle their I mean, I know why, but I don't respect how they handle their business. You know, Craig Berube kind of just came out and I mean, his quotes were just like a masterclass in what not to say. It's like, we're mad because it's our guy. Well, yeah. And it also ended his season. We're talking about a third pairing defenseman ended your captain's season. Yes, that warrants anger, and it was a bullshit hit. Yes, that is normal. And then Tree Living spoke for the first time today because they have the GM meetings. It was just a quick little interview with Gino Reda, TSN, and it was kind of like, yeah, like we're not happy about it, kind of thing. But it was pretty. It was about as vanilla as his entire year, which is to say he did the bare minimum. And it from Berube, it's as vanilla as the coaching job he's done all year. And it's just more of the same from them. And look, we're talking about a group that has been suspended more than any other team since Peros has been in charge, despite icing, by and large, one of the softest teams year in and year out in the league. They don't get any power plays on a nightly basis. Like we're constantly watching things from like, how How was this not called? Like they had a 2-on-1 taken away from them for absolute nonsense in that Minnesota game between Kaprizov and McCabe. And nobody said a word. And McCabe was like incredulous. Like he was beside himself as he skated to the box as to what was happening. And they just gave up a 2-on-1 and nobody on the broadcast said a word about it. We just watched them go down. William Nylander, their best player now, skating clean down on a 2-on-1. The ref blew the whistle to call an embellishment. It's a joke. Like it's a nightly basis with these guys. Any moment, they're constantly the short end of the stick. And the Leafs do nothing. They say nothing. They take it. You know, they grab their ankles. They lick the boot. However you want to go about it, that's what they do.
I
And
think
yeah, I
that
find it infuriating.
I think the officiating on a night to night basis, I think it's tough to I don't know if it's tough to win that PR battle. I don't know how actionable that stuff is. Like the stats are what they are. They don't get the power play. So
Yeah,
it's
but it's
fucking
not a
bullshit.
night to night basis. It's a year to year basis at this
Yeah,
point. Like
consistently.
there's enough there for them to come out and say, all right, like this is a pattern of ridiculousness now.
Yeah, and maybe that can be done behind closed doors. But what I mean to say is like on the suspension on this, here's an opportunity. Like this is an absolute meatball down the plate. Like you were talking about a reviled player that everybody hates, who's not very relevant to the league overall. You're talking about a star captain who just won the Olympics, one of the highest profile players in the league. You're talking about a hit that everyone, we said this at the top, everybody agrees that it was a complete bullshit hit. It's like there's nothing controversial about this one. Like this was the one that they could dump the clip on because like they're so clearly in the right. Nobody cares about Gudas. Everyone agrees he's a fucking butcher, and he has been. I like
Yeah,
he hasn't been suspended in 7 years. Like that's
nah,
that's about
irrelevant,
the Department of
irrelevant.
Player Safety. Like that's
Yeah,
their business. I'm sure we could find some clips that were suspendable in the last 7 years for Radko Gudas. Like the fact
Th-
that this is
this
the
was a
one
layup, Nick. This
that
was a
doesn't
layup.
elicit the big response, like I understand that frustration because you're never going to get a better opportunity than this one to really, yeah. And it might be totally useless, but at the very least, like they could show, we talk about the players showing something, like the management group could show something, like the same level of, I don't know what you want to call it, listlessness that applies to players. I mean, and the management group with any luck are complete sitting ducks, and it doesn't really matter at all how they respond to this because they're just kind of on borrowed time. But if I were them, like maybe I would try to do something that would garner some goodwill and see if I can have my slim chance of survival. Like, I don't know.
They don't do anything to galvanize the group. It's just such a lifeless, uninspiring franchise right now. It just and people could say, "Well, what's it going to do?" You come out and you complain and the league laughs in your face. First of all, I think that really downplays how much sway the Leafs have. This is a major market. This is the ultimate market in this league. And you're kidding yourself if you think otherwise. The Everything runs through here. You hear other players talk about Toronto all the time. I watched that Tampa Buffalo game, that like ridiculous 7-6 game, and they had Logan Stanley up in the broadcast booth because he just got traded there. And in the middle of it, for literally no reason ever, the announcer goes, "Just so you know, over here we hate Toronto." And Logan Stanley laughed and was like, "Yeah, I came from Winnipeg. Don't worry, we already did there too." And the Leafs are doing nothing, and they stink this year. You have no right to, like, there's no reason to talk about them that way in that scenario. But every single thing, it's rent free across the league. And you think the Leafs actually coming out and publicly pressuring the league doesn't make a few people think twice or get their back up against the wall? I don't know what to tell you. Like, go look up peer pressure
They have Connor
because
McDavid
that's
on
a
their
real
side this
thing.
time.
Like,
Like they had the wind was behind their sails there for
and
to make something happen.
and Connor McDavid saying what he did definitely got some pull in the sense that like I saw TSN now questioning, well, how should the NHL move forward with Department of Player Safety kind of thing. If you don't think the Leafs as an organization, as a brand, have that impact, it's crazy. And then even if we entertain this hypothetical world in which they do come out, they bitch about it, it doesn't actually change anything, then you can galvanize your group with that. Like you can create an us against the world mentality. That's a powerful thing. If you get guys to buy in, everyone hates us, we never get a call. I feel like I've talked about this for years. Like lean into it then. Just be the villains.
Or
The Yankees partly are the Yankees because they know and they buy into it. They're like, yeah, everyone hates us and we love it.
well, also
Like,
we spent part of this episode talking about like what does Auston Matthews think about this current situation? Wouldn't it be helpful to be like seen to be going to battle for him, even if that didn't
yeah,
happen in the moment? Like
yeah,
that's another angle to that.
yeah. We know that he thinks that the Gudas thing was a joke because his agent came out with that statement. I'm sure that they're pissed. It
Yeah, and
would
you
be
shouldn't have to
nice.
rely on the agent for that. Like that's
It,
not the agent's job.
it
And like,
it's shameful that the agent has come out with just significantly harsher wording than anything coming out of a Toronto Maple Leaf front office or coaching staff member's mouth. Like it's shameful. It's shameful. It's just another feather in the cap for me of like just clean these guys out. Clean these guys out and let's just move forward here. I don't even know why it's still like I'm gonna have to dissect this at a separate time, but I don't even know how this is coming up as a conversation where it's like, well, this guy might be back or that guy. There's no coming back. I mean,
yeah, the True Living will need a direction before he can come back. I'm like,
yeah,
the direction
like
is out of
the,
town.
yeah,
It's the 401.
yeah, the table shop's gone, the chair shop's gone. There's no more legs to stand on. You had a deadline where you just traded three guys for some picks and called it a day. Like you couldn't even look at that and say, man, like he really set them up moving forward. Like he brought in this guy or that guy. Like there's so
That
much,
30th overall pick.
yeah, there's so much
I'll be
talk about the
cooking.
Boston Bruins retool of sorts. And I'm like, yeah, but they brought in like six bodies and a
And they're
collection
not
of
that
picks.
good.
Yeah. So like that's a significant difference than five draft picks, some of which weren't very high. And I'm watching the Leafs center group going, how are you going to improve this? I'm looking at the free agent pool. I'm like, how are you going to improve this? And I'm looking at their draft pick capital. I'm like, how is that going to turn into a viable center option for next year? And so, look, I think that's a good semi transition here um, as we go along to the lineup because we are seeing some guys come up and show something. To me, I like Cowan has. We're gonna get to Groulx. Groulx, is it Groulx?
Through.
Also, why wasn't he on France in the Olympics?
That I literally have that in my
The
notes. Like
fuck?
absolutely snubbed by France.
Yeah, why wasn't he on France? I always assumed he was from Quebec.
Yeah.
And when I was looking it up, I was like, why would this guy not have been on Team France? Like you had Tessier and Belmar, and that was about it. And you didn't think this guy could I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference, but like on
I
principle,
feel
why
I
wasn't he
feel
there?
bad for him. Could have had a fun Olympic experience instead of
But
grinding in the AHL.
that doesn't make any I don't know. I need to look into what happened there. I don't know if there was something there, but entirely bizarre to me that he wasn't there. Um, we'll get to him in a second, but first and foremost, because it's actually more important, is like Easton Cowan's finally getting minutes, and he looks good. I like him. I've
Yeah.
always liked Cowan. It's not that I didn't like him; it's that they weren't developing him properly. And if you think about it, if there was some world where the Leafs were in it, or making a push here, he wouldn't be playing, and it just would have been like the biggest silver lining is that he's actually getting a ton of ice time and opportunity now because they're out of it. And hopefully that serves them well moving forward and he continues to work on his game and learn and develop here. But I shudder to think of the thought of them being in like a playoff race down the stretch here. He wouldn't have been getting any ice time. He already was a healthy scratch as they were doing it, and he wasn't playing when they still quote unquote thought they were in it.
Yeah. Their playoff push out of the Olympics. He wasn't involved at that point.
No, he was like the last game before enough was enough. He played 8:23. It would have been a total waste of time. The that is the best thing that probably has happened in the sense that if it weren't for this, he wouldn't be playing or developing at all, and their best prospect would be just wasting away. But now that he's getting minutes and you could see his game coming along, I really like him as a piece. And I'm not, I didn't enter this podcast on a huge like trade Nylander binge, I swear. But if you think about it, like Nyes is one, Cowan should be one, Matthews, Tavares, that's four top six forwards right there. Nylander's five. Like are you adding one and calling it a day in that sense? I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, is Tavares a top six forward also?
He's not, and that's where it gets even more complicating because he should be a 3C or he should play on the wing. If he plays on the wing in the top six, which is entirely reasonable for the record,
He's a 20
he's
plus goal,
yeah, he's
50
very
plus point
productive.
guy,
He's very
probably next
productive.
year.
He's a good finisher. And you see guys like that all the time. Matt Duchene, Claude Giroux, they hang around the top six, they're skilled, they can play.
Might even energize him a bit, having less defensive responsibility.
Yeah, you'd like to think. But if he did move there, then that's your entire top six winger group right now. It's already locked in. That doesn't seem great either. So, you know,
I don't know if Cowan's written in stone. I mean, he might be just because they don't have other alternatives, but like,
he's
I
not
don't know
written
if
in stone for me in that he's a good top six option. It's that I would want him there playing with the other. Like, I think he plays well with the skill players. And I think I don't know if he would necessarily be great there in October, but I think if he was there starting in October, by the time January or February rolled around, I think he could be really good there.
I think also, he's at an age and stage where he could come back from an off season and look like a bit of a different guy. Like
Yeah.
his lack of mass and strength has been an issue at points. If he can really work on that in the off season, like he might feel like a slightly different player. Like he's not actually the tiniest guy in the world frame wise.
No.
Like he may be in by even next season or the season after, just a guy who feels a little bit different in that sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I obviously would like to reserve judgment on how he ends the rest of the season. Like if he gets 2 points in his next 15 games, might feel a little bit differently about it. But I'm liking the signs I'm seeing in his game, and I feel optimistic about him. I think he's a good player. I think he's a like a keeper amongst the group. Not like an untouchable, never trade this guy. Obviously, he's not that type of player, but he's a guy I like in the mix. I think he fits in a number of spots because he is a good forechecker. He will get after pucks. He will create turnovers. He's skilled enough to play with skill players. He has some pace to his game. I like him whether he's beside Nylander or whether he's beside Nyes as a winger combination. I like either of those looks, to be honest with you. So him, I'm optimistic about. And then that brings us to Groulx. How are we pronouncing this, by the way?
I think it's Groulx. I don't think
Okay.
I don't think the L is being said.
Okay. Groulx. Yeah, I mean he looks good so far. I don't think anyone will argue. Obviously, he has 3 goals in 4 games. Two of those goals were just money finishes,
Oh yeah.
and like those are
The
great goals.
proper snipes.
Yeah,
And also the wisdom to not pass to Calle Yarncroke there. That's really the difference between him and Quillan. Is
just
Quillan is the young
sewering
guy who
Quillan.
passes to Yarncroke, and Groulx is the wise veteran who's taking the shot himself.
Yeah, and he's 6'2". He's obviously strong. I think his biggest issue has been skating over his career. He acknowledged it. He says something he's working on. I just where I get into and we'll see. I mean, guys are going to come in hot, feeling good about themselves all the time.
It's taken like seven
It's
shots or something, and three of them have gone in. So,
yeah,
that'll happen.
like let's pump the brakes and then further to that, it's are you really a viable center option? I definitely if we're coming in next year and the Leafs center group is Matthews, Tavares, Groulx. I
That
don't
that ain't good.
I don't think we're going to
That's a
sit
huge.
here.
I describe that as a huge problem.
I would say I would not feel great about that. So, good for him. I like him. I think he's showing that he should be a player in the mix for next year. If like they came in to camp next season so far, and we'll see how he continues and smooths things out. But my initial thoughts are it's like if him and Lorentz are battling for the 12th forward spot kind of thing, I think that's pretty good. I think if you're sitting there on paper and you're writing him into the top nine, I think it's been just a continuation of a bad deadline
Yeah, I
and
think
through to a bad offseason.
any kind of top nine expectation is a pump the brakes. Like obviously he's done well in the AHL this season. He's looked good thus far. He's earned a bunch of ice time for a coach who is delusionally probably still thinking about winning at every. I mean, not delusionally. That's not fair. Like he's the coach. He's going to try and win. What else is he going to do? But like the fact
You
he's
could have
logging
just
in.
said delusional, though. That would have sufficed. If you didn't talk about winning, if you just said
Yeah.
delusional, it would have worked.
But what I mean to say is like he's come to an NHL team and he's earning 17 minutes a night,
Yeah, he looks
and there
good.
are other options. Like, Verbeek
Yeah.
could put Quillan up there. You could do other things. And so, he's obviously scored that goal shorthanded. He's doing some penalty killing. Like, yeah, he's a nice to have. At this point, he's a nice to have, and maybe it'll be more than that if he absolutely lights it up the rest of the season. We might say something different about it, but for now, it's like, oh, it's good to have a player who is going to make less than $1 million against the cap next year if you use him. That is an option for potentially multiple roles at the bottom of the lineup. Cool. I mean,
I,
you'd like to think as you're in a phase where you're at retool, rebuild, whatever, a transitional phase, we'll put it that way. You'd like to think you'd have more exciting guys that you're seeing for the first time than like 26-year-old minor league veteran types who are exceeding expectations, but that's where they are. So that, it's a good development. It's nothing but good things for Groulx.
yeah, I feel for Quillan on the flip side. If you really look at his season, roughly around Christmas, he was leading the Marlies in scoring. He was clicking at a point per game. If you remember, the Leafs brought him up in January. He played like 2 professional hockey games in January. Groulx went on a heater in the Marlies in that time. They send Quillan down. Hasn't played hockey in a while. Takes him a little time. They bring him back up after. It's like finally. And what do? Scott Laughton line mates. Scott Laughton is a proven NHL player who's had a solid career, and he couldn't do anything with these line mates. And now we're watching this kid come in who hasn't done anything in the league, and it's like, here's the same line mates. Let's see what you look like. What's he gonna look like? We're like,
Yeah, I mean,
he
8
he
minutes
made
a
the
night with Yarncroke and Lorentz is not a situation where you're going to thrive. That's
he
the
made the
reality.
360 pass to Yarncroke, and I was sitting there going, unreal play, but what was the point of that? You might as well just taken that to the net yourself, and you would have had a better chance of getting a point that way. It's just it's unfortunate because he's trying to do the right things and he's making plays. He also set up Yarncroke for a nice cross ice play against Anaheim. That should have been a point right there as well. And you're just kind of watching, going, like, what am I learning about this guy? I'm learning absolutely nothing. I'm sorry. He has wheels. I like him. I think he's a strong kid. Like, he doesn't get overpowered in battles. He clearly has a pretty good sense of the game, in terms of hockey sense that way. But what's he going to show with those
Well,
guys?
at
Nothing.
this point, like, just make Groulx the 2C, make Quillan the 3C, and make Domi the 4C. Like, sorry, Max,
That
season has not gone as planned. Like, we don't really have any plan for you right now. You're going to
Domi
eat some
has
shit minutes. That's it.
Domi has 1 point in 8 games this month, and that point was the tap in courtesy of Nylander against Buffalo on that 2-on-1. I mean, he's done nothing. And yeah, I'm there with you. I would just put him in the 4C hole, kind of shrug and say, well, it is what it is. If you don't like it, play
Set up,
better.
set up Yarncroke. See if
Yeah.
you can be the magic man to do it.
If you don't like it, play better. Or I'll just put you on the wing and like I'll move Joshua down or something to that effect.
But you
Who I,
could put Lorentz at 4C for the
yeah,
rest of the year. Like, who cares?
yeah.
It doesn't. It
I
doesn't
just
matter.
it bothers me that they don't think that way though. They don't sit there and just say, let's start figuring things out. It's like how are we still watching Philippe Myers? What do we have to watch? There's nothing to watch anymore. He's 29.
He's not part of the future. He doesn't have upside. He's not doing well in the present. Like,
He's been
there's
bad
no
all
benefit.
year. All year he's been
Terrible.
bad. And there was a point in the first period against Minnesota where Myers kind of crossed center and Quillan shot right up the seam. And if he hit him, it wasn't a breakaway, but he would have had a one-on-one the way that the Minnesota defense opened up. he would have had a one-on-one with speed where he might have been able to catch the guy flat-footed and just go around him. And Myers just dumps it in. And it brings right around right to Minnesota because they fully cheated on the dump in. That's what happened. That's why Quillan was so wide open in the middle. And they calmly skated out of the zone. And I'm watching. I'm not sitting here saying Villeneuve makes that pass or Thrun makes that pass. I'm just saying I
They
can't
might.
watch Philippe Myers not make that pass anymore. That's all I'm saying. Like I just can't watch it. I don't know what we're doing. I'm watching, it's like Tarasenko scores the goal. Simon Benoit flips it out and messes up the flip out, and then he scores that goal. And I'm thinking back to the week before against Tampa, where Benoit ices one when Quillan wins the faceoff, and then Cooper comes out immediately with the Braden Point line, and Jake Gensel scores against them. And I'm like, I'm just watching this guy make the same mistakes and crappy plays game after game after game, and he's a lineup staple. And meanwhile, we're watching some of these kids come from the Marlies, and they look not bad. And again, I'm not even saying that I think Thrun is this diamond in the rough or Villeneuve is this diamond in the rough. I'm just saying, let them show us because I don't need to watch
They
these guys
they
anymore.
might be worse, but
Yeah,
also who cares?
doesn't
If they
matter.
are worse, that sucks. I mean, they
Yeah,
get a nice day in the NHL paycheck, and you learn something.
yeah.
And
Look,
like you
Marshall
gotta
Rafai came up. We saw that. And we are like, all right, never mind. And that was it. And you're
thanks
fine.
but no thanks. Like
Yeah,
you got to be learning things. Like that's really what we keep bringing up this theme of like, what is the rest of the season for? And it's not about the draft pick realistically, because I just don't think they can sink low enough. They're not getting back into the playoffs. Maybe the lottery balls will favor them and they'll miracle their way out of their current terrible predicament. But like, you can't really worry about that at this point. And so, like, what is the season for? Like, and you know what? They don't have a lot of young, promising guys to learn about, but like learn about your version of that. Like another version of this team might have interesting prospects. You have Bo Groulx and Jacob Quillan. At least learn about them.
yeah,
At least find out about Villeneuve, as you said, or Thrun. We're gonna see, but like
yeah. I mean, you should be trading Riley and Carlo. You have no idea what to expect from Tanev. It behooves you not to find out if these guys are anything, or you could sit
and
there and say
yeah,
that could be a roster spot going
a
into
lot
next
of them
year.
aren't. But sometimes guys surprise you. Like Groulx has surprised them so far. We don't necessarily know where it's going. We don't want to get
Yeah.
out in front of it too much, but like it's been a nice surprise. The guy's
Th-
beaten some goalies. Even when he came up with Anaheim, he scored 1 goal in 45 games and it was on an empty net. And then he beat 2 goalies in 4 games.
yeah.
Pretty
I mean,
good.
Thrun
And
is
then got the
six.
tip goal.
Thrun is 6'2". He has 123 games in the league already. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say already. He's 25, so that's not like crazy good or anything. But he's played in the league, similar to Groulx.
I
He's
bet
played.
I bet he'll do better than Benoit if you put him in the lineup for Benoit, because the bar is so ridiculously low
I bet
that like
it would take him one game to make more tape-to-tape passes than Myers has made all month. I'd actually would probably want to test how far back in time I could go in that one game from Thrun. So, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. I hope it gets rectified. Like Ekman Larson, congratulations to him, birth of a child. That's exciting. When he was out, I was like, awesome. Let's get to see this kid now. And of course, he's just an emergency recall, doesn't play. And we're just watching this group go out, and I'm going, I don't really see the point of this. Like, I don't get it. Especially when you can, if they could point and say, well, look at these other Marlies have come up and they look terrible, then you might have a leg to stand on again. But you don't actually, because they look pretty good. They look like serviceable NHL players to the point where people are like, why didn't you call these guys up earlier? I don't know. Let's at least try it on defense. You have nothing to lose at this rate. That's how they should be treating the rest of this way.
yeah, it's come up with some phantom injuries. Like it's been a tough year for Jake McCabe. It just hasn't really gone as planned. He's a guy who takes a lot of physical abuse. He's in his 30s. Phantom injury, man. Like take a seat. Like
I,
it.
I did respect. I thought he laid it on the line against Minnie. I respected it. He did.
Yeah,
He was like
but
nine
like
shot
he's not someone I
blocks.
really tend to doubt in that way.
No, I don't doubt him either. I thought that was a courageous. As much as we talk about courage the other way, I thought that was a courageous performance from McCabe. in a, against a really good team in a tough building,
Go
all these
reward
things.
them with an early summer.
I'm all for it. I don't know if they're going to tank far enough still. That would be the
I'm not
ideal,
even for the
but
tank, like not even for the tank, just to look at some guys because again, it just doesn't matter. All you can do is learn. So put yourself in a position to learn.
yeah, yeah, we've learned things all year and they haven't applied them, so I'm sure it's going to be more of the same. But oh well.
Oh, what a fantastic place to leave this episode. Yet another episode absolutely brimming with optimism and hope, as you guys have come to expect over the last couple months here. We do appreciate you listening in, even if, to some degree, you got to be sicko to want to listen to Leafs content right now. We appreciate it nonetheless. We appreciate you guys who are leaving ratings, reviews, things like that. And we'll be back with you again soon.